So yeah, there he is. There's Jordan. Hi. Hey everybody, welcome on into the Big Access Podcast. My name is Brock Benson. I'm your host today. I am the Director of Marketing over here at ProdataKey, the manufacturer of mobile first access control. Today we have a really special guest with us today. We have a very prominent figure in the access control world. His name is Lee Odess. You guys have probably heard of him and seen him plenty of times before, but he was gracious enough to join us today on the podcast to talk to us all about access control, where things have been, where things are going, and what we need to do to find out more about this industry. So Lee, thank you so much for joining us today. We're happy to have you.
Of course. No, I appreciate the opportunity. I've loved seeing what you've all been putting together and known the company for a while. So it's as soon as you asked if I could come on, I was happy to do it. So thank you for the opportunity.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to take some time out of your busy schedule to jump on, because we are really excited to have you here to talk to us a lot more about access control. But before we dive into what access control is and diving into everything there, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit more so those listeners or those viewers who don't know who you are can become more acquainted with you.
I appreciate that. So yeah, I'm Leo Odess. Out of Bethesda, Maryland, focused on the access control marketplace. We do a bit of consulting, a lot of writing, and really just love the industry and want to spend my time there. The company, like I said, does a little bit of consulting with companies. We write a monthly, it's called the Access Control Executive Brief, which is really a range of topics about the industry, insights, analysis, really just any information. So yeah, we geek out a lot about access control. And from there, worked for a bunch of access control companies, some lock companies, was an integrator at one time myself, but found that my natural habitat is on my own, focusing on the industry, trying to take a global view, try to take a look at what's going on today and tomorrow, try to bring some business insights, not just technical, but try to bring really business application insights. So that's a quick one on me.
Well, that's really cool. I mean, it sounds like you have a ton of experience in this industry, and that's what's gotten you to where you are today. So, I want to dive more into the mind of Lee Odess here, and I want to learn, I want to see and have you tell me, what does access control mean to you?
Yeah, so access control to me means a couple things. So it's really the first interaction people have with spaces. So it's almost like the welcome wagon, if you would, of the interaction user experience you're going to have when you come to a place. And it's really knowns and unknowns. So it's even if you come to a space on a regular basis, it's that interaction that you have. It's also morphed a bit from historically, it's been about keeping bad people out, and now it's about letting right people in. So
that's huge, right? Yeah, that's so different than what the general mindset has always been on access control. It's always been about keeping the bad guys out. But you're spot on, where it's not just about keeping the bad guys out. It is about keeping the right people and giving them access to where they need to be able to give access. That's a great viewpoint there that I love.
Yeah, so it's one of those things that came out of the pandemic that I think was really highlighted before, where when everyone was kind of known and you knew who was coming in the space and they had access and it was, quote unquote, easy for them to get in, your job is to keep people out. Now, though, everyone's a visitor in a lot of ways, especially hybrid working or however it might be. And, on demand, co-working, the rest. So this idea that you don't always know who's going to be there, but how do you let the right people in? The other one is, for me, access control. It's a utility in the building, but we have an amazing opportunity as an industry to create value beyond the locking and unlocking of what we do, because it's one of the things that you notice any of these buildings that have tenant experience applications, any of the software companies that are coming in, it's one of the only things that actually drives adoption of applications, because everybody wants to use to get in to the building. So unlike, not everybody wants to order a latte, but everybody wants to use this to get in. And because of that, we sit in a great position where we can add value of utility that is fundamental to how the building needs to operate, but then we can also then increase the value beyond. There's not a lot of industries that have that opportunity. That's ours. So I look at it as value creation opportunity as an industry. And that's what I think about access control. So it's not just, again, keeping bad people out. It's not just about locking and unlocking. It's about letting right people in, but it's also what other value creation can we make as an industry that goes well beyond what I've defined the market as $10 billion high security market, but we looked at it and said, all right, that value beyond is a $70 billion market. So that's 60 billion. That's the access control market that I'm interested in.
Yeah, no, that is fantastic. That's really cool. And when you look at where, what it is today and where it's going in the future, there's been a lot that has changed from what access control has been in the past, from, when it originally started as, on-premise systems, basically just, your standard 26-bit systems, things like that. But, with your history in the access control field, kind of tell me about, what was it like when you first started to getting to where it's been now?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're actually doing is we're documenting the history of electronic access control. We're actually going back, meeting with a lot of the people, and if they're still alive. There's a handful of 80-year-olds that are still around that remember the beginnings back in 1963 when it all started. And frankly, what's interesting there, just a little side note, if you're to look at the way we positioned and sold our systems and the value creation that they were doing back then, frankly, we've been messaging the same thing today. So we haven't necessarily evolved our message in a lot of ways. And so if I was to think about what's changed, there's a lot that hasn't in a lot of ways. And that's okay too.
Yeah.
I call them old truths. Like, our industry has a lot of really good old truths, but now we have some new ones. And like you said, something that's different. Back when I first started, it was with a cloud-based access control company. It was the first one. And we were in the back of the ISC West as the kind of weirdos that had to an idea that this is legitimately an enterprise type system that can be used in a lot of places. And frankly, the market was sort of like, okay, but do I really need it? And so the adoption necessarily wasn't there at the beginning to where it currently is now, where my belief is when we talk about cloud and mobile, those are architectures that shows that our industry hasn't necessarily evolved, because it's really, when we talk about the architecture, we're not talking about the value that it creates and the things that it can do. And I think we're sort of moving into that now. So if I look back, it was always about the bits and the bytes. It's always been technical. Our industry, that's why I get excited about what you do, Brock, because you're one of the few that go beyond product marketing. You tell stories. You are, you guys, even just little things that you all do, like your panel's yellow. That was a thing, because everybody was gray, blue, or black. That was it.
Always, right?
Right. So just there's a little bit. So marketing has become more important, and storytelling, I think, coming through that, which was different then. Before, it was cut sheets and trade shows, and that's how discovery happened. Now everyone's online, so there's a million different ways to do it. I would also say we were a cottage industry back then, where there wasn't a lot of interest from the external. Now Apple's getting involved, and you got Google involved, and Amazon with Amazon Key, and all these big companies that frankly before had no interest in this dirty, in the basement weird industry called security. Yeah. Now they're all here and engaged. So it shows that we've moved from the cottage to the mainstream, and that's what's very different than we had before.
Yeah, you're not lying there, right? There's a lot of big players who are trying to make or trying to come in and take their space in the industry as well. So and with that, there's obviously been more and more people who are coming into the industry and making their impact and their wave, trying to jump into this industry, and some of them are doing very well with it. Some of them are seeing the struggles that this is a much more unique industry than a lot of people might think. And one of these things that has been, kind of big in this industry right now that has hit us really hard has been supply chain issues. Here at ProdataKey, we haven't really had any supply chain issues. We had the foresight when the pandemic hit that times might be tough. And so we went ahead and we ordered up, multiple years worth of, of equipment that we can go ahead and produce our products with. And so we haven't had any supply chain issues, but that's not been the case industry-wide. How have you seen supply chain change this industry, and how, what effects do you think that will have going forward?
Yeah, I think what you saw is for a while there, we were in a bull market, people running, and it didn't matter, and everything was good and the rest of it. And, in my opinion, we may have been caught in some areas where there wasn't some planning that was done on that side. I also think what it did was it it opened up now new opportunities that we didn't necessarily have before because we didn't have to fix anything before. So now it's allowed the opportunity because frankly, there's been some reasons to take a look at who are your suppliers, who are your partners, how are you purchasing, things like offshore versus nearshore versus onshore, like how things are manufactured. It's gone away from just being especially in North America here, where it's like pro-America to actually like, we must do it here so that we don't have these problems. Like, right? So
Yeah.
it's sort of reframed, I would think, some of the ways that we've done business that frankly, maybe we got a little bit lazy, or maybe we got caught, or, maybe frankly, you're only as strong as the weakest link type of an approach. And it's now opened up these new conversations. I think in time, this too will pass, if you would. And frankly, it's starting to already. You're seeing it. Some areas, I think some people are having still some trouble, but I think in time it will pass and we'll move on to the next thing. And my hope is people will be stronger coming out of it. But I'm still hearing there's still problems, and some people aren't out of the woods. So I don't know. The other thing I would say that it did is it's opened up an opportunity at the customer level to have to take a hard look at other opportunities that they may not have. Just like manufacturers aren't necessarily looking at their vendors. Now you've got customers that are saying, you know what, I'm going to give this one a shot because I can't get said lock that maybe they didn't necessarily want to take a look at before. Because why? If it wasn't broken, again, the job was to keep bad people out. If they just kept bad people out, why invest in something different? Well, now if I can't get the thing to keep bad people out, maybe I'll take a look at something else. So it's also opened up some. This is where I try to frame the positive side of this. In some cases, it's sort of the positive is new vendors, new opportunities. Also, it's allowing other people to fill some oxygen into the ecosystem that maybe weren't allowed to before, because frankly, our industry has historically liked to do what it's done in the past, and now it's time to try some new stuff.
Yes, you're not kidding there. I mean, you nailed all of those points on the head, and a big part of that, what I got out of that, is talking about there's changes that are going to be happening because of this, right? Whether that is you're looking at other manufacturers, other vendors that might be able to supply a working product that actually might deliver something better than what you were expecting. That's huge. And the other cool thing that has kind of come about from this is everybody's kind of looking at their own products and what kind of technological advancements need to be happening in the industry. And so what kind of changes do you foresee happening in the industry going forward, coming out of this pandemic and into the future of access control?
Yeah, so I look at it currently right now, we're at sort of this split off point that's happening. There's a fork that's been created. And it's not that one's good or one's bad. It's just that there's two forks. There used to be one lane. And that one lane was high security. And that's where we focused as an industry. And that's what mattered. The same stuff in airports was what we were putting in multifamily. We were putting in the local sub shop. It didn't matter. Now, what the difference was you either used 100% of the features or 1% of the features. But frankly, we were a horizontal approach to the marketplace. Now, what I do think is happening, and frankly, that high security was a very hardware-driven industry that had software to support the hardware. Now what you're seeing a software version of our industry go off, and out of that, there's like splinters upon splinters, and one of those splinters is a verticalization where you're seeing solutions built for that particular, so like multifamily, for instance, where before you would take an access control system to control the base building, and then maybe you had some locks that went off into the units, but that was about where it began and it ended. It was really about the maintenance. It really wasn't about the user. Then if you coupled mobile with it, and I'm creating software solutions, now it's about the experience. So it does matter that it's called a resident versus a user. It does matter that you have the ability to do certain integrations that on a horizontal plane may not make sense because it didn't serve airports. It didn't also serve sub shops. So why would I do the multifamily? Well, now if I'm deep in multifamily, there's a better business proposition to go do that. So that verticalization, that software centricity of the system, that has flipped now, where I build software and I go to find hardware that supports software. Very different model. I'll say I don't think we've done enough work on the business model side to support that, but I have faith and I believe it will happen at some point where the way the pricing's done and the way product is brought to market, all that stuff will change a bit. That's happening. The other thing is, we talked about it, is you're starting to see, I'll take another vertical. I'm sorry, I'll go that, like work tech. So the enterprise, the expectations around that are very different. It's about the visitor management side of it. It's about the experience of the tenants. It's about the data that is happening to where I have the ability to make reservations. So there's a revenue standpoint to our industry that we didn't have before. Again, this vertical, high security, you're keeping bad people out. Over here, operational efficiencies. It's about experience. It's about revenue generation. That opens up a whole new opportunity where you're seeing a ton of new players that come in. My belief, and one of my theses coming out of this, is we also have a new channel called the ISV or systems integrator, different than the security integrator. But these are people that understand like Salesforce and ServiceNow and Tableau. They look at our products as an enterprise software solution that happens to also manage access control, if you would. And that just changes the entire expectation. So things like open APIs, good data governance, like a totally different idea around cybersecurity. It's also how you make money. It's also like a new channel. Yeah. So that new channel is integrating all of those things together to deliver a solution for customers that we haven't necessarily seen before. That's just three.
Yeah, and that is all huge, right? That is, man, I love everything that you just said there, and we can go on talking about that for hours. And that's really, really cool. And along with that, that all those changes that are coming up, that's all going to need to be taught to these new verticals, taught to people who are currently into this industry. So where do you find good resources of where some of these installer bases or these new people looking to get in the industry, where can they go to find out more about this kind of stuff?
You mean outside of the access control executive brief?
Hey-oh, shameless plug.
Outside of that, so I'm a huge fan of the Security Industry Association. So SIA does a really nice job. You have ASIS, so those associations that are there. I believe the vendors themselves do a good job. I do think we're on the need to rethink how we do certification and trainings and bring people in there, but there are resources that are on that end. I do think getting involved in local chapters and national chapters, like going to ISC West, going to Securing New Ground, going to the local ASIS chapter that you have to build relationships. If you're young and new into the industry, there's a lot of mentorship programs that exist also that you can go do and get information like that. And you'll find there's a community online. Like LinkedIn is a wealth of knowledge for our industry. It's very active there. You'll Absolutely. Find people communicating, expressing, engaging, and I think it's a good place to go do that. So those are some examples of places you can go.
I love it. That's great. And so for any of you guys who are listening who are new, make sure you write those down. Go and look into them, see if they're a good fit for you, because like Lee was saying, there's a wealth of knowledge out there for everybody. So we want to make sure that you guys take advantage of that so that you guys can help this industry be the best it can be. That's what we're all here to do. Lee, we are just about out of time, but I do want to give you one more little second to give yourself a shameless plug and tell people how they can reach out to you and how they can learn more from you.
No, not a problem. I would say the best place to do would be on LinkedIn. So if you hit me up on LinkedIn at Leo Odess, it's the LN/Leo Odess. That's a good place to do it. You could also reach me at lee@leodess.com. So if you email me, I do one-on-one conversations regularly all throughout the day to meet people, to have conversations. So those are the two best places and ways to get me. So feel free to reach out. I'd love to.
Awesome. Well, hey, Lee, thank you so very much for jumping on to the Big Access podcast today. This has been a fantastic conversation that our listeners are going to love. And for those of you who are listening, make sure you subscribe to this podcast, give it a 5-star rating. If you're also watching it on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to this channel, leave comments on what you want to see next, and we'll be able to help you guys out there. But thank you again so very much for jumping on, Lee. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will talk to you later.